Welcome to the My House Podcast, a show about the past, present, and future goings-on at the My House Youth Drop-In Center in Wasilla, Alaska, with your host, Michelle Overstreet.
Welcome to episode 61 of the My House Podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Overstreet, and today I'm joined by Chris Patterson. He's the Northwest Regional Administrator and National Foster Youth to Independence Initiative Lead from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Welcome, Chris. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
We kind of have a run a show because we don't want to run amok. That's the deal. And today we're just talking around what's HUD's role in combating youth homelessness. How does youth homelessness compare and contrast with adult homelessness? What are some things that you want to share with us today that you feel passionate about?
Well, it's hard not to feel passionate about it, all of it. But the biggest thing is telling people the story of how it came to fruition in the first place. It was in May of 2019 when Secretary Carson had met with youth who were really passionate about making sure they were addressing homelessness for foster youth aging out of care. The biggest thing I think is making sure that they got their voice to put across the Secretary's desk, which was really rare. To think about this, from the minute they walked in, met with the Secretary, met with the Assistant Secretary, Hunter Kurtz at that time, and the team from HUD, and got it developed to where in 4 months record time, which is unheard of for a federal initiative or a federal policy period, but it was under the leadership of Dr. Carson and his team that actually made it happen, but with the youth who came in expressing their interest of what the biggest barriers or challenges that they had that they could see. And you fast forward to what, being a former foster youth myself, aging out of care, you look at what are the barriers, and I reminded some of them today that, look, you guys have a lot more resources today than we did back at the kids.
Oh, yeah.
As we were kids. So there's, you kind of look at the fact that you don't look a gift horse in the mouth, and you appreciate what somebody else is setting aside for you. But you also have to be good stewards of that to make sure that when you get that voucher for a 36-month time period, that you do your best to make sure that you're using every ounce of that time to save money, get a job, or going to college to lead up to the next step. And there's so many success stories that are out there, whether they're in Bremerton, Washington, Orange County, California, Texas, Philly, across the country. I don't know them all by heart. I know that under Secretary Turner's initiative and lead specifically, and under Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary Ben Hobbs, we're really focusing on how do we help really push out self-sufficiency and self-reliance. Mm-hmm. What's the biggest goal? What's the end goal? How does that look like? Where is it at? What do they end up like? What are the stages in life? So it takes every one of them on a journey of their own, and we're there to make sure and support them, but it really is them. They're going to be the ones moving on in their own speed, and I think that's what, for me, it was the most exciting thing, to become a presidential appointee, first of all, and then also to become the national lead. You take it serious because you're representing the secretary, you're representing the president, you're representing the administration. And then to fast forward it to today, we have President Trump, who declared May as National Foster Care Month. First Lady Melania Trump is supporting foster youth across the board and adoption, which all coincides with everything for housing and stability. So you look at those are the biggest pieces, and how do you build upon that?
Yeah.
There's so many other things you can talk about.
My parents are foster parents, and one of the my foster brothers that was staying there actually has gone through the independence program at 18 and 19, is now aged out. So I've had somewhat of a firsthand look at this. In that initial meeting that you're talking about several years ago, what were some of those barriers that the youth that were there brought to the table that they were seeing as being these kind of high priority barriers that needed to be addressed?
They were targeting youth homelessness in general, but because we're aged out foster youth, it puts us in a different bucket, but it doesn't mean we're special or anything less or more than somebody else. The difference is youth homelessness across the board they were targeting. So if you look at foster youth in general, how they're aging out of care, you look at the 20-some thousand youth that age out of the foster care system. What are we doing to set the stage on how we make things more successful, to give them a chance to break the cycle of poverty? How are we looking at the future? Where is the end goal? as as you just pointed out with your parents being foster parents, I can remember my foster parents. Ron and Carol did it for 50 years, and I still don't know how they did it because I remember what we were like as boys. I mean, but it was a farm. We grew up on a small farm. We did our chores, our responsibilities. I worked for the dairy farmers, worked summer youth programs, just the things to kind of keep me focused. But it teaches you work ethic. It teaches you self-reliance. It gives you a moral compass. It gives you things you need to have where you have self-gratitude, where you look in the mirror every day, and you can have the self-respect and the things that you need to have for what you're looking at yourself as an individual. And as you're seeing that, others around you are seeing the same thing. I mean, you really do start to shine. You're happier. You got more pep in your step. You're doing things. You beat the stereotypes. You become more successful, in your own way. And that's the biggest focus.
Yeah, I love that. I think that the perception and the stigma around youth in general, but youth homeless, people experiencing homelessness is really challenging to overcome. I talked earlier about the housing issues, and when we first got our housing, nobody wants to rent to you if you're housing homeless youth. When we leased this building to do the drop-in center, the businesses around in the downtown corridor were like, "Oh, it's going to ruin the neighborhood." Just that alone, it creates a blanket that they feel. They feel that. Thankfully, the opposite happened. This building had been vacant for 2 years, and when we moved in, we actually cleaned up the neighborhood, and it's more vital now than it was when we started. People recognize the good work that we do, and the kids are helpful and positive, and good things happen here. But I think that perception and that feeling of I have tremendous value to the people that I live with. I have tremendous value to my community, and I can value myself.
It's something it's just a long-term commitment. So you think of the name, the first thing that people hear about the U.S. Department of Housing, they don't finish the sentence. It's the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. So when you look at everything that's built around cities, counties, states, there's so many federal dollars that flow through the U.S. Department of Housing in a community, in a state, in a county, to where all the federal agencies. So you look at homelessness with youth, the Foster Youth Independence Initiative, multifamily, single-family housing in general. Everything is a cross-connect. So whether it's HHS, SPA, Interior, Agriculture, all of it together, it's a pretty strong engine. But people have to realize that, for me, I'll say it in my way. I took full advantage of the fact that somebody was sacrificing dollars to make sure I got the care that I needed. Mm-hmm. So I was very appreciative of the fact that when I walked into a total stranger's house, that somebody was paying them to make sure I had a place to live. Now, not every foster home was perfect, but that wasn't the point. I also had to take responsibility for myself and what I was doing to make sure that they understood I respected what they were giving up. Mm-hmm. And being, putting yourself in that situation. Fast forward, you age out, you either graduate from high school or you don't, you get your GED, and your track you take, you get a job. Hopefully you have all those things in place before you start having kids. So that way you're able to take care of yourself first before you have that big responsibility of taking care of something that's bigger than you.
Right. Love it.
You have probably a more 50,000 foot view of both youth homelessness and the foster youth independence program, how those coincide, what providers are doing in the community that is assisting those populations because of your role, and we're very in the trenches with it here. What do you see around the country that is leading to success for that youth homelessness population, and then specifically with foster care involved youth?
I would say, the biggest thing is compassion. It takes a lot to give your heart to something that's bigger than you. And I know that with Secretary Turner, again, Secretary Carson, this wouldn't have happened without him. And then Secretary Turner picked up where we left off, full speed ahead. His biggest emphasis is making sure we have connection to faith, family, community, looking at everything that's out there. You want for-profit, nonprofit, every agency, whether you're faith-based, not faith-based, you want everybody to work together, the public-private partnership. That's what's going to help, FYI. Because once the housing side and the landlords start to see this is a good thing, we start to see the reality, the litmus test for housing authorities and the landlords who are willing to give up their property to allow them to have opportunities for the foster youth to come in and have vouchers. It's a big deal. I mean, the success is there. There's a lot of success. I would say that, the one thing that he cares about the most, Secretary Turner, is making sure we have a pathway to really solid foundations. And I think that's who wouldn't want that? I mean, that is in essence what a parent wants for their kids.
Yeah.
But because these kids don't necessarily have the parents that fits the part at that lifestyle, right, at that moment, it doesn't mean they're not their parents. It just means that sometimes you pick up things from others that could be mentors to you that steer you in the right direction, because you sometimes need that outside voice. It's why our kids are always well behaved at somebody else's house. And you usually hear that from the parents. It's like, oh, my kid's an angel over here. Really? So they hear oftentimes from their friends and their friends' families, or just total strangers. I mean, how often does a kid get a compliment saying, hey, nice job. I really appreciated you showing up. You're responsible, you're respectful, you appreciate that. And that's when the landlord says, okay, I can do more. When they start to have those successes and they realize it, and it's the out-of-box thinking,
Yep.
where providers and housing authorities and communities come together, is when it really works.
Yeah. We see that. We see that. It's a tremendous blessing.
And Alaska's different. I mean, I remember when I lived up here when I was younger, it was, it's unique, just period. I mean, you've got you have 242 tribal corporations, and you have, basically it's one of those areas where it is the last frontier.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can have some pretty out of the box thinking here and pretty creative.
Yeah, agreed.
But you touch on something I think we talk about a lot, which is like when we look at the YRBS, just as an example, one of those big protective factors that we see leading to long-term success is how many trusted adults do you have in your life, and how can we increase that protective factor? And then to the value of community. I mean, we had talked about it a little bit during the tour, but just I think that's a huge advantage of our supper club is our clients that sit down and see that hey, here's this member of the community that values me enough to not only make this meal for, me and the folks here, but then also is willing to give their time and sit down and talk with me about how things are. So as we kind of bring the conversation back around, what do you think that service providers, whether it be for-profit, nonprofit, faith-based, not faith-based, how can they be working better together to provide, like you said, that foundation for these youth? Is it just more communication? How do you foster, and I guess from your perspective as being part of the federal government, how do you help foster that connection to incentivize folks to provide that firm foundation?
I would say a lot of it's going to be with our priorities now, especially under Secretary Turner, excuse me. I got to get used to that.
It's a change.
Secretary Carson, Secretary Turner, both are fantastic men. But the biggest thing is with Secretary Turner's focus, deregulation. Deregulation makes it easier for communities to come together, which means if we as the federal government are having less of a negative impact in your community, makes it easier for the public-private partnerships to come together, because then we're less of a barrier. Then we don't become the problem that we once were. So the more red tape we can cut, the more efficiencies we can have, the things that we can do to dictate the standards of professionalism and quality and a good outcome in return is exactly what he wants to have happen. So those are the focuses for me. It's like you think about nothing. I'll say it in a different way. There's nothing in life that's free. Nothing. Not even friendship. Because if you're truly a friend to your friends or your wife, it's work, it's commitment, it's dedication, it's sacrifice.
Presence. You have to be there.
It's sacrifice.
Yeah.
So when somebody gives you federal dollars to come in, or dollars at all, I'm going to give you dollars. I expect a return on my investment. I want to see, it's not I hope to see, I want to see that these kids are given the pathway, they choose it, they meet the right mentors such as you all, They have people who walk in for the front door at the time they see it. You're really going to be there when you go toe-to-toe with them at the worst possible time in their lives, most times. So when you actually they walk in the door, literally it's a trust issue. They see a lot of people coming and going in their lives transactional.
True.
So when it becomes less transactional and it becomes more investing, that's when things change. And I think that's when the reality of the kids and young adults, still see what is there. It's kind of like kids and animals. They are the greatest BS detectors there is.
True.
So you just know. So we don't have a facade of disingenuous feelings. Secretary Turner is extremely clear on what we're going to do, on what our focus is to make sure that we are there for outcomes. We want to see reality. We want to see it hit the pavement, making them a taxpayer, having them graduate from college. As an example, I was in Bremerton, Washington, and I met with some young adults. They've all taken full advantage of the FYI voucher. One of them graduated. The story that some of the folks that had, I can say her first name's Kaylin. There's a video out there now she made, or the Housing Authority made, the successes she had, and the other students that I met, young adults who are now, one's actually looking or getting ready to look at buying her first house at 24.
Nice.
But none of that would have had happened without FYI. Mm-hmm. It wouldn't have happened without that launching pad to say this is what we need to make self-sufficiency a reality.
Yeah.
So you become less reliant on federal government and state governments, and then you can give it back. That's the whole premise.
Yeah. And you're describing an exit strategy, which Michelle talks about all the time.
Ad nauseum is the word he wanted to use.
For sure.
Right there.
But it's better financially, and it's better for the individual when we prioritize those exits from the governmental systems or the cycles of poverty that a lot of the folks we work with find themselves in. It's better for everyone, and it's truly, I think, not only the best outcome for the government and for the service providers, because they're able to help the next folks that need it, but it also is truly the most compassionate thing for the individual, because it allows them to go out there and achieve their dreams, their goals, and have a life that maybe they didn't think was even possible prior to them getting that, what you're describing, that launch pad.
I think for me, the motivator was pretty simple. I would go to my friends' houses when I was in my foster mom's house. And it was really always hard to call mom. That was something that I couldn't do it. Mm-hmm. I think it's one of those things, it just didn't click, even though I had the greatest love and respect for them both as parents. The biggest thing is you look at, when I go to my friends' houses, what they lived like and what they had. Now, that at 16 years of age and 17, you start to see, look, okay, this is what it looks like.
Right.
It's not necessarily a nice fancy car, but it's a nicer car. It's a house.
Yeah.
You're comfortable, you're safe, and we always were as kids. We didn't know any different. I always felt like I was privileged and had a good job and a good life and didn't worry. I never sweated the small stuff. I just didn't care because I knew I was okay. But when you go to someone else's houses, you start to dream, and you put that visionary board. That's when I first heard it. What's your vision board? What do you want in life? And you start putting those things up on the board, and the reality, well, I want a car, or I want to have nicer clothes, or a certain pair of shoes, or whatever it is you're looking at. But you start to realize that those are all just cosmetics on the bigger picture, but it gives you drive and ambition and motivation to move to the next level. And okay, then you start to realize, oh, now I can understand what money is. Mm-hmm. And that's our biggest push too, is having them to understand financial literacy. When does it become a reality? When should it become a reality? Mm-hmm. I know that's something the secretary is very passionate about too, is what do we do with that? How do we make sure that they understand the usage of dollars? And I think everybody should.
Yeah.
But I think the reality is how do you set a path for yourself, and who do you trust to be your mentor? And sometimes it is the strangest people you would least expect that you stick with. And it was for me. I remember I was on a path going down quickly as a teenager. And if I wouldn't have been picked up, then I probably would not have been in the path where I was. I can guarantee I was not on the path where I'm at now.
Wow.
I would have been in prison for sure.
Wow.
And I know that was, for me, that was a stark reality. You know, I think that like I said, you count your blessings. And at the end of the day, I just thank God that I had the chance and that somebody actually really cared.
Yeah.
So that's why I think it is. Mentorship comes in the strangest forms.
Mm-hmm.
And my mentorship from some of the guys were some of the strongest, determined individuals with the most colorful backgrounds.
Nice. We talk about something here about being willing to do the hard things and have the hard conversations. It's really easy to walk along next to somebody when everything's going well. You know, the decisions are good. Everything's kind of happy-go-lucky. But when they start to turn away, veer away, and head for the ditch, that's where you have to have those hard conversations. And young people know if you're willing to have the hard conversations with them, you're somebody who'll stick with them. You're not gonna worry about whether they're making you look bad or, some kind of a community dynamic. They're looking for somebody who's going to walk with them and unconditionally be present, even if they don't like what the choices are. And
you have to learn to. I made a commitment. You have to learn to move on. And you were describing a young lady prior to us coming in here.
Yeah.
You have to be able to let go of things from the past to move forward. And when you're ready in a better spot mentally to come back to it and address whether it's family issues or friend issues, you have to learn to grow and you have to learn to heal yourself.
Yes.
You have to learn to trust yourself, first of all. And you have to learn to realize that there's something bigger than just you. But you can't do that until you've taken care of you first. And I think that's where the biggest thing it comes with. You just have to learn to let the past go.
Yeah.
And it's hard for people.
It is.
It takes a lifetime.
Yeah. Yeah. And experiences, that's not a linear process. It's not always a straight line.
It's more zigzags and circles than anything.
Yeah. And so I think that's really important. If you're working with foster care youth or homeless youth or both, being willing to zig and zag and just kind of go with them, but always stand with them and build that trust, have the hard conversations, be willing to say the hard things. And
well, honesty is key.
yeah,
I would say most of the kids you talk with, even if it's painful at first, it'll piss them off. You're going to have conversations which makes them sweat, get irritated, want to cuss, get mad at you, it's your fault. Then they come back and say, you're right. Or they might come back to you a year later, 2 years later, say, you know what? Remember that conversation we had? You were right, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So I think that's just that linear process. It's that long road. When you're 18, you think you know everything. Well, when you're 16, you think you know everything. And then you're just going to move on. Hence where you have some of these kids who just have that kind of free spirit where they're going to do what they want to do. Well, that kind of behavior does have consequences.
Yeah.
Life does catch up with you pretty quick, and it's not always what you had hoped. As a matter of fact, it's never what you think.
Yeah, it's true. Very true. We're about to wrap up. We're kind of at the end of our time. We don't want to take too much time with you. We're so grateful that you came to visit and shared wisdom with us and knowledge and.
I wouldn't call it wisdom.
Well, we would call it wisdom. Just, information that you have that we don't is great. Is there anything that you want to add for the listeners that would be helpful in perception around homeless youth and HUD's role?
Yeah, HUD has some very determined individuals in leadership. I can tell you that I worked with some of the best, classiest professionals, from the secretary, the deputy secretary, to assistant secretaries, on down to the staff. Every one of us care about a finished product.
Nice.
Every one of us want to see success. Out of the 10 regional administrators that I work with, everybody is on the same page. Senior advisors. Everybody. We're here to make sure that the president's message has gotten out, the secretary's message is getting out. But first and foremost, is we want to see success in the reality of what's for that person. I will have a different vision of success than they will have. Mm-hmm. Mine is, now I'm 56 years of age. I've gone through life. I've felt the pain. I've felt the suffering, felt the hardship, the emotional heartbreak, all this stuff. That's what they're going to have to feel. They have to build their brick foundation, brick by brick, and know what successes they're going to have to take, and where they're going to go to college, where they're going to go to vocational programs. Everybody's going to be different. But the first and foremost key thing is we're here to support that. We want to see it be successful.
Right.
We don't want to waste an opportunity with somebody who's ready to stand by. And not every kid who exits foster care is going to go and want to use the FYI voucher. That's just not going to happen.
Right.
So, but there's a pretty strong chance if they see the image of what's happening and word spreads, which it is. And it's early on in the administration. I mean, think about this. We have a long road for us to push forward on FYI to show more successes.
Yeah.
And that's where each state will have its responsibility to step into an area, if they aren't already there, to support more of the Secretary's mission and goals of what we want to see. Because if we can stop the cycle at a young age, they don't have kids doing it.
Right.
That means when they go out and have their own children, the cycle stopped.
Yeah.
And they can become the effective adults that we had hoped they would be.
Yeah. Functional in the community. We talk about that because we really discourage panhandling among youth in this community. We just don't. Just get off the corner. This is not where you belong. You're better than this. Get off this corner.
Just have a sense of pride.
Yeah.
Know that you're cared for. Know that people do care about you.
Yeah.
But you also have to take accountability for your own behavior and what you're going to do in life.
Yeah.
That is nobody else's choice but yours.
Yeah. So I really love the posture and the information that you've shared today. It's encouraging. It feels supportive of our mission and what we aim to do. And so thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for the work that you do, and thank you for joining us. That's all the time we have for today. I want to thank Chris Patterson for being here with us. The My House podcast is recorded at the My House studio in Wasilla, Alaska. Our producer and editor is Ozzie Keener. I'm Michelle Overstreet. Until next time.